welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hi, welcome to Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast. This is Jessica, and I am here with two amazing co-hosts.
Hello, I'm Jen.
I'm Natalie.
And we are really excited for this episode. First of all, one of the guests is one of our favorite guests of all time, and we are welcoming her back. And another of the guests is one of my favorite horror authors, and this is his first time on here. And they are going to be talking about something that is very near and dear to all three of our hearts, because we are all huge fans of I suppose the original project that spawned this project, and now this project itself. So why don't you introduce yourselves and tell us about Slayers?
Well, I'll jump in first, Chris. And everyone, please pardon my cold. I sound like Kathleen Turner on a bender these days. But my name is Amber Benson, and I am an actor and a writer and a director. And I dragged my friend Christopher Golden into the insanity of making audio dramas 20 years ago, when we did an incredible program together called The Ghost of Albion. And then he dragged me into a Buffy audio drama called Slayers that we did for Audible. And I'm so happy to be back here on the podcast with you guys. And yeah. Want to introduce yourself, Chris, now that I've babbled?
Listen, you're very cheerful and energetic for a woman old. So I'm Christopher Golden. I've been writing full time for 30 years, novelist and sometimes screenwriter, comic book writer, and writer of all kinds of things now, and co-writer and co-director with Amber of Slayers, a Buffyverse story, an Audible original.
Oh, you're so good. You got the whole thing in.
I know. I got it in there. You usually
the whole title. They're like,
yeah,
must.
Yeah. And I also feel like I should point out that we have been working together for like 20 years. It might be longer.
I mean, we were like 4 when we started. So
well, you were.
All right. You were 14 and I was 4. That sounds
all
weird.
Right, fair.
Yeah. Well, first of all, this is awesome. And when we spoke, I think it was 2021, you had mentioned that there was a possibility of a secret project with Christopher Golden. Was this it?
Yes.
Yes.
We've been working on this since 2019?
Yeah. That's when it first started to come about. Yeah.
So basically we could say Slayers, an Audible original, sneak peek hinted at for the Page podcast. So that's amazing. I'm really excited to hear that. And as soon as I first heard about this, I think Jen was the one who's like, "Oh, did you hear about the Slayers thing?" And I was like, Christopher Golden and Amber Benson, this has got to be the secret project.
The secret, not a secret anymore.
No, that's true. It is out in the world.
Amber, just so you know, I'm looking it up right now. Oh, wait, that's not even right. I was trying. Sorry, go ahead. I was looking up to see when our first collaboration actually was published.
Oh my gosh!
I found wrong information.
Ugh, internet, stop being
2001. Bad. Okay, April 2001.
Wow! Oh my gosh! Wow, that's bomb.
So there you go.
Are you trying to say we're old?
No, I'm old. You're a youngster still.
Oh, I am fully middle aged. I had to have my first colonoscopy. I was like, oh, that's yeah. There we go.
See, this is why people love you, because you will talk about anything.
I will, because everyone needs to do it. It's very important.
Absolutely, very important.
Yeah,
I assume you have a clean bill of health.
Should I talk? I mean, I don't know yet. There was one polyp that they have to look at.
But this is why it's important. Listen,
it's really
librarians understand.
We do.
We do public health.
We do.
Yeah. I have picture. I have picture of my colon, Chris.
What did you say?
They gave me pictures of my colon. I was like,
I know. I have
make,
some of mine somewhere.
Should I make this my Christmas card? I was like,
I know.
I was like, Merry Christmas from Amber and her colon.
Oh my God.
Until I'm on cold medicine. I'm a little
Great.
You made colonoscopy sound so cool.
Yeah.
I can't wait for my first colonoscopy. Thank you, Amber Benson.
Oh my
well,
God.
everyone needs to do it. 45 is the new minimum. You
Yep.
hit 45 and they want you in there. So
It's coming. It's coming for me.
mammograms and colonoscopies. We're old.
The rest of this interview is now going to seem very anticlimactic, but to follow that up. So as you said before, you have both done projects on your own and you have collaborated together as well on novels and on these sort of like scripted podcast, radio play type things. And I'm curious about like how those writing processes differ for you. Like, do you have a different approach for when you're doing this sort of like what really feels like a radio play as opposed to when you're writing a novel?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll,
Yeah.
from my perspective, it's always different. I've collaborated with a number of different people, and each of those collaborations is different. But there isn't anyone I've collaborated with in such a broad spectrum of media or mediums, I guess, in this case, as I have with Amber. We've worked on comics, we've written animation, we've wrote a screenplay, novels, a novella, and audio drama now, and directed this together as well. So every medium is a different discipline. You have to learn a different way of doing things. But we did have a leg up in this because when we did Ghost of Albion 20-ish years ago, it had to be able to be listened to without the animation. So we had to sort of teach ourselves during that process what it means to try to tell a story with just dialogue and sound effects, and so that was an advantage, but it is very different, obviously. Yeah.
No, I mean, you have to realize that the audience is going to be listening and they cannot see where the actors are. So you have to sort of do sometimes these sort of info dumpy moments where you're like, oh, look at this lovely room. Oh, there's 5 windows. Oh, one of them is open. And sometimes you get very lucky, like we did with our actors, specifically Leia De Leon Hayes, who is our new young Slayer, Indira. She's incredible, and she had to do so many of those beats for us. And she does them so seamlessly that you do not know you are in the process of being info dumped. Like, she's that good. So yeah, it's very much thinking in terms of this is in someone's head, but it's not a book. So they're not getting all of the pieces of information that you get in context. And yeah, it is a very different medium for sure.
So this Buffyverse, did you always know that this was going to be made into an Audible, or did you discuss other forms it would be turned into, or you knew this is what it was going to be?
Yeah, I mean, this was the intention. Basically, the short version is that I had been working with Lydia Shama, who was our exec on this at Audible, elsewhere before she came to Audible. And when she went to Audible, I was talking to her about projects, and she mentioned that they had the rights to do this. And immediately I was like, well, clearly Amber Benson and I need to be the people to do that. And while that was self-serving in many ways for both of us wanting to do it, it was also just reality. And I've said this over and over and over again, and I think that Audible understand it now, that it's actually true, that this thing would not have happened were it not for Amber, because these cast members would not have said yes. Most of them, some of them might have, but most of them would not have said yes.
I feel like Jimmy Leary would have gone on any journey with us because he just is like the best. He's like, adventure? We're going on an adventure? Okay, whatever. I'll do it. You want me to bark like a dog and drink grape soda? I'll go with you. No, I got I laugh and say my Rolodex out, but I got my contact list out, and I was like, all right, I'm going to harass everybody. And literally, like, this was in the very beginning. We were trying to figure out like who would be excited to come play with us. And I was making phone calls. I called Charisma and I was like, hey, we're doing this thing. This was 3 years ago. Would you be interested? And she's like, maybe, keep me in the loop. And then I remember calling, Emma Caulfield, and Caulfield's like, okay, maybe just let me know. And then once it dragged out, then I started getting phone calls back. Hey, is that thing going to happen? That would be really, I'm going to do another project, but like, let me know. So I make sure not to block out that time, So, I think we knew ahead who we wanted to work with. We reached out to them and we were really lucky. Everybody that we wanted to work with, who I'm friendly with still years later, and Chris is friendly with, agreed to come and play.
And at least this is my next question. In Buffyverse, you have Cordelia as the Vampire Slayer. How did that come to be? Why and not another character, not, I don't know, Anya, or even like Drusilla in this Buffyverse?
Drusilla the Vampire Slayer. That would be an interesting.
So crazy. Literally.
I always found it fascinating that Charisma was up to be Buffy. Like, she had originally auditioned, it was in the final mix to play Buffy Summers. And I always thought, well, that would be such an interesting world, that meta-ness of like, what would the show be if it was Charisma who was the Vampire Slayer? And so one of the things that I was really excited about when Chris and I first started talking about doing this was having that reality happen. And the only way we could do that was to create an alternate world, which is how we ended up in this very kind of meta alternate universe sort of world of Slayers. But yeah, from the beginning, I knew I really wanted to see her. And I'd worked with her before on a film, and she was so good. And I was like, she's underutilized in this Hollywood world. We need to show all these facets of her. She's such a good actor.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the conversation we had, obviously, was, there is the whole justice for Cordelia element to it. That's something that was important to us as well. That I personally, and I'm not speaking for anybody but myself, always felt like both the character and the actor got short shrift.
Yeah.
And that was important to us. But also it is this idea that, on the one hand, we knew who would be fun to say, like, okay, it would be like if you were putting a band together to go on tour, like, who would you actually want to be on the bus with?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there was that element of it, but there was also just this this knowing that you look around at some of the things like that that Charisma has been cast in, and the word underutilized is so correct, because, like, she was great when she was on what's the Kristen Bell show?
Veronica
Mars.
Yeah.
She was, she shows up on Veronica Mars and she's great, but there's so much more that she can do. And so we wanted to start chipping away at that more.
Yeah.
And I think we've begun.
May I ask a follow-up to that? I think Cordelia is a particularly great example of something that this show does really well, which is that it like shows characters who've like undergone huge transformations over like time and because of like the weird things that have happened to them. But while still kind of like maintaining that core of like who they were when everything started. And so like when as a writer, like how do you maintain that core of the character while also kind of like stretching them, beyond what's been written so far, and also making them sound like authentically themselves, if that makes sense?
I feel like the authenticity came from you, Chris. Like you know the show so well, and you know those characters so well. There would be times I'd be like, can you make Tara sound more Tara-like, please, Chris? Because I'm too like, you're like, when you're acting it, you're sort of too close to it. So I really do give Chris the credit on these characters sounding as authentic as they do. It was really interesting. Yeah. Sorry, Chris, you go on.
No, please.
I was just going to say, it was interesting with Charisma because I think she was nervous at first because this character was a little different. In fact, Chris, if you want to talk about that, because I think
she sort of pulled us aside several times on her first day, very nervously saying, I don't know her. Like, I don't know this character. And we were sort of trying to communicate to her, like, that is the point. This is not the Cordelia you knew. And she's like, yeah, but it is. And we're like, it is and it isn't. And yet, as much as she was concerned, she nailed it the second she started. I think she felt it. And I think once she started doing it, she got very comfortable with the idea of being the hero. And we loved that. And we had, she was at one point, I feel like she was so used to sort of having the punchlines that she was like, why don't I have more punchlines? And I'm like, well, you do, but you also have this sort of kick-ass. And as far as the trying to make the characters 10 years later, but also in a different universe, and maybe they've had a different life. Look, and again, like Amber was on the series and spent a lot of time with the cast and with the scripts. I wrote, I think, 13 Buffy the Vampire Slayer novels and a bunch of comics, and we wrote comics together in that world. I think that it's sort of like if you grew up in America but you lived a number of years in the UK, you're like Gillian Anderson speaks with an English accent, and I think that it's sort of like that in the sense that the accent never leaves you. So you can write this new version of Cordelia, like who this new character is, but the accent of who she always was is still there, if that makes sense.
I actually wanted to kind of delve into the new addition to the Slayerverse, Indira. I adore her. I have to say, we talk about, just different like alternate realities and, things being meta. There's nothing more meta than a Slayer's fangirl becoming a Slayer. And when you talk about her info dumping, like I think like Jen and I, we kind of talked like this is her special interest. Like she's like Slayers are her special interest. And she's a Slayer. So what's she gonna do when she finds out during breakfast? She's just gonna go out there and kick butt and try to find a Whopper. That just sounds so real.
Yes. Beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, we loved the character and we loved Leia so much. But the character is like partly practical, and we'll talk about that. It's practical because, as Amber said, you needed those info dumps. But on the other hand, it's sort of like, well, what would it really be like if it was a world where there were thousands of young women who were Slayers? Certainly there would be young women who would love to be a Slayer, right? And it'd be like, oh my God, I wish I was like that. And then all of a sudden you wake up one morning and you are, it was just so much fun. And watching Leia, and the best thing, Amber, so I'll let you, but when, I always say this, the first day, and neither one of them has a problem, I don't think, with us talking about it. James Marsters and James Leary were in the studio, and Leia, that was day one, the three of them together. And as soon as Leia started, you saw James and James both sort of stand up a little straighter. Like, oh, okay. We're not here. We're here for real now. This isn't just to play, like, because she's so good. Not that they're amazing, but you saw them like brighten up, like, okay. I think they thought, well, she's here to learn from us. You know what I mean? It was great. So good. Yeah.
She's a BAFTA award-winning voice artist. She is uber talented and so sweet and kind and good-hearted, feet on the ground.
Yep.
I think she's going to be a major
super
star.
Grounded. Yep.
We were so lucky to have her, and hopefully we'll get to do more, and we'll have more fun with Indira and with Leia. We've got everything crossed.
Yes.
I always thought actually that like her past experience in Ragnarok like really set her up for like audio fights, having to go like
Well, it's really funny. Our so Chris and I wrote this and then co-directed it together, but we also had another co-director on board, Casey Wayland, who's also our producer, and he put together all of those incredible posts, like everything you're hearing that is not a voice. That is Casey. He and his team just kicked butt. It's an incredible, just genius post production, like work that they did. But when we were casting, he was like, "Oh, we should have Leia De Leon Hayes play Indira." And the way he was talking about her, I just assumed that like they'd worked together before and that this was someone he knew. And so then when we started like, reaching out and she was interested, I didn't think anything of it. I'm like, oh, it's just like when I call like, James Marsters. I'm like, hey, you want to come, Well, it turns out Casey had never worked with her before. He just played the game and thought she would be great. I felt like such a ding dong, but we just got super lucky. Like she doesn't know any of us. She just agreed to come and play.
We all thought, based on the conversations with Casey, we all thought that he had worked with her before. And when they were reaching out to her to cast, they were also like, "Oh, it's with Casey Wayland," and she was like, "Okay, like whatever."
No, we talked to her on Zoom for the first meeting we had with her, and we were talking, and I was like, "Oh, she doesn't know Casey."
Yeah, yeah, it was crazy. But so yeah, we were super lucky to get her, and the beautiful part about it was that she just fit right in because and that's a crapshoot too, because look, we knew who we were casting for the other roles, right? Everybody was a known quantity, but everybody wanted to be there, and it was very important for us to create an environment where, I'm such I can't think of the word. I'm such an optimist, I guess is the word, because
You're
like
cockeyed optimist, Chris.
Well, no, but like my feeling about stuff like this is literally like I'm Kermit and Fozzie in the original Muppet movie. Like, let's put on a show, and I want everybody to be happy and sing the Rainbow Connection at the end. Okay, but it's a crapshoot, and it was great, and Leia just was immediately embraced and embracing, and it was wonderful.
I have to say really quickly, because this is kind of something that I love just about the resurgence of this type of media, all these Audible shows, it just calls back to radio dramas from, a long time ago. Is Foley artist still the word for people who make like the sound?
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
definitely. I mean, they do the audio stuff, but they also like film and TV. It's all kind of the same in the same world, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and I would say I'm not sure. It probably is the term, even if you're using computer generated sounds, but I know that wasn't all, because Casey definitely had various things come in. He had 2 or 3 different dogs that he auditioned for Jasper.
Oh, nice.
Jasper.
One of which was his dog, which didn't work out. But yeah, I mean, and again, which isn't to say, by the way, that he wasn't just as involved in directing the actors as Amber and I were. He definitely was. Yeah. In fact, when it came to the action stuff, he was like the maestro.
Yeah.
But
now
yeah,
you go. Now you go. You take a punch. Hit. Kick.
Yeah. And there's video of Leia, because she doesn't know how to throw a punch at all. When she's recording it, she's like,
Oh,
that's so great. Yeah,
you guys are being very polite. I appreciate even like a hand went up.
You started off with colonoscopies.
no, we're like all
I threw you off. Sorry.
Listen, I will tell you that having known Amber as long as I have, that's like the tamest thing she could have brought up. So
awesome.
So since we are talking about the team effort, could you talk a little bit about like how the supporting cast came together too, because there's some really great folks in there as well, including someone else who's been on this show, Juno Dawson. Like when
Juno is fabulous. Fabulous. What an incredible like performance. Juno killed it. Yeah. And Juno, along with Danny Strong and Tony Head and Fina, they were all not with us for the main record because they were in other parts of the world. So Juno, I think, came to a studio in London. Tony was in the UK. Fina was in the UK, and Danny Strong was in New York. So they were doing work on their own, not with other performers. All of them were kind of doing except for Tony, who did get to come in, and we had him up on the big screen, and he was recording in the UK while everybody else is in LA.
Both ways.
Yeah.
The stuff with Tina, he recorded
mm-hmm.
in a bottle, right? The two of them, and then he did come in on the big screen, and everybody was so happy and teary-eyed.
I know. But the fact that Juno's performance is so incredible, and Juno did that without, I think I was reading some of the other stuff, and that, there was no like crew of cadre of other actors performing that Juno's working off of. So the fact that performance is as strong as it is a testament to Juno's work and dedication. And then, we have Julia Cho, who plays,
Miss Bang.
It's not Miss Bang, who was originally Mr. Bang. And then I know Julia from working in LA. We'd have a lot of crossover. We were in like a writers group together where actors would come and perform what had been written. And I was just like, I want to see the world that I live in, which is a very diverse world. And I feel like that was something that the original Buffy was a little not up to snuff. And that's very, it's of that time. You look at those late 90s, early 2000s shows, and there's just not the diversity. The fact that the LGBTQ plus stuff happened on Buffy is kind of incredible and very like forward thinking for the time. But with us, for Slayers, we very much wanted to make this a diverse world. And so we have these incredible performers who came in and just killed it.
Yeah, fantastic. We also, if we're talking about the supporting cast, we should mention 3 people who were there for very specific reasons. One of the voice actors, background actors, is our friend Ali Costa, who is the woman who introduced us all those years ago, 24 years ago, I think now, Amber. And because she was doing Amber's website and she was doing my website, I think she was 16 at the time.
Yeah.
And I was coming out to LA, and she's the one who set up our first meeting, which was great. And so she's a voice actor in there. She is an actor and a playwright in her own right in LA, and she's terrifically talented. And then our friend Jasmine Hyde, who was the star of Ghosts of Albion all those years ago, plays Althea, and ripped our hearts out.
Oh my God, her screams are chilling.
Oh my God. I thought she was actually being murdered in the studio.
She was another one who was doing that all on her own. She was alone in a studio in London. Yeah,
well, we were on Zoom, and she's recording that, and we could see her. And how do you go from just being chipper, having a little chat with your old friends, and then just like you're being murdered. And then our friend Jessica Gardner came in as Amy Madison, and absolutely, I was going to say slayed it, but I don't want to be that. Absolutely killed it. She was amazing.
Yeah.
And it was so funny because she was almost offended, I think, because after she finished, I said, Jess, that was incredible. Like, that was really amazing. And she looked at me, she was like, I'm an actor.
No, we had all this stuff ready for her, like all the, listen to this, and she had totally already done all the homework and was ahead of us.
Yeah.
She's so good in it. And I just, I'm so happy that we got to work with people that we love, having Jimmy Leary on board. I mean, Jimmy or James, I call him Jimmy because he was Jimmy when I met him, but he's James, he's a dad of like 2 grown sons. He's not Jimmy, he's James. I gotta pay my respects. But having James on board and just having Clem come back, I think we needed him, number one. I know he probably feels like we were doing him a favor, but I feel like he was doing us a favor, because that, like, having that character in those really stressful moments to come in and just like make fun and make it light, it relieves the tension and it allows us to move forward. And without that, I don't think the show would have worked.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
the character and his performance of the character, without that ingredient, the show would be completely different.
Yeah.
You know, because not only is he ridiculously funny, but the character is just so damn lovable.
Yep.
You know, and
second best friend.
Yeah. 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 So that's so yeah, I mean, he was invaluable to us.
I want to just talk a little bit about Emma Caulfield and Anya, and also Julia.
Yeah. Oh
Like,
my gosh.
So incredible, both of them.
Oh my gosh. Anya is absolutely one of my favorite Buffy characters ever. And I always I definitely feel justice for Cordelia, absolutely. And also Anya too.
Yeah.
You know, both characters just they had so much, and I felt like they just deserved so much better in so many ways. So having Anya come back, and I don't want to give anything away, but the way that you had her come back was so good. How did you kind of conceive of how Drusilla would be in this situation and how Anya would be in this world?
I mean, I just want to say that both of them are incredible. I mean, you walk into a room to record with Juliet, and she is 150% focused and ready, and she is Drusilla. And in fact, she knows that character and the show so well that she gave us some notes on. She's like, well, actually, the character. There were notes on things that, and it was, I mean, amazing to have that commitment.
I mean, she added flourishes and dialogue bits, you know, which were invaluable.
And then Emma. I mean, Emma's a screwball comedian. She's like Carol Lombard. Like I do not know why she is not just like starring in rom-com after rom-com, because she's so good in that film Timer. Like that is what she's so funny and charming and Anya like. And I just any chance to make her do ridiculous things is really what we live for. Like, you're going to be you're going to, or Anya, you're going to be Anyanka, and you're going to be a puppy dog. All in the same scene. Have at it. She's incredible, both of them. But I think what was fun was to have them be not the Anya and Drusilla that we know from old school Buffy. And I think that was sort of your conceit originally, Chris, was the Juliet of it.
Well, yeah, I mean, having her be the queen of vampires, you know, having her be the big bad, and then, you know, having Tara come in. We don't want to, you know, do too much spoilers, but yeah, I mean, having all of that happen, and again, also Amber, you know, you always talk around this so beautifully, but you know, Emma did what Emma did, but you did the same thing.
You did have some acting with
three
myself.
Different versions of Tara. All of which you had to deliver. Yeah, exactly. And again, like, you know, I think we had conversations like, do you want to record these voices separately? And Emma and Amber both were like, no, we're just gonna go. We're just gonna, you know, play it. It's like, oh, so you're playing a scene against yourself and all that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I feel like that was the idea from the beginning. But as far as thinking about the world, you know, again, it was important to envision what this world would have been when there was no Buffy Summers. Nobody in that world has ever even heard of Buffy Summers. It doesn't mean she doesn't exist in that world, but she definitely was not the Slayer. And, you know, what was that world like? You know, what was different about it? So, yeah. That's why we need to do like 10 more seasons, because we've only begun to scratch the surface.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So many more stories that like this opens up, you know, the world for. I've seen in some other pieces that you've mentioned folks, you know, who you would love to bring back. In some interviews I saw you mention both Seth Green as Oz, and Claire Kramer as Glory, who's like maybe my favorite big bad. She's so
Oh, she's
great. And like, do you have any more like bucket list like character / actor friends who you'd love to work with again?
Chris, is there anybody that you're like, I must?
I mean, always. I mean, people. I mean, obviously, lots of people who were never on the show. But as far as people who were on the show, unfortunately, several of them are no longer with us, which makes me incredibly sad. Robin Sachs, who played Ethan Rain, was a wonderful guy, a friend, incredibly talented, and of course, Andy Hallett. But you know, there's a long list, and we'd love to get David Boreanaz on. That would be fun. And we already said Seth. And I mean, there was an episode, a completely ridiculous episode of the original series, with these redneck vampires called the Gorch Brothers. And there's something remarkably stupid about that. And so I'd love to get the Gorch family in somehow. What about you, Amber? I've got to think about it.
I mean,
Pedro Pascal.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, he was in the original.
He was in an episode.
Yeah, he can come back. Should we get Amy Adams and Pedro?
Amy Adams and Pedro Pascal. Yes.
Just front load it with
just
some
cameos. That's fine.
Cameos. Well, what actually was, when you brought up Seth, what was really funny is we were recording, and what was really, really neat was the synergy of having everybody in studio together, like on separate mics, but like in the same room, looking at each other while we were doing these scenes. I think that is a big part of why it feels so organic and it works so well, is that synergy. But we were recording one day in this studio, and someone was like, "Oh, Seth is coming in to record something else in one of the other session rooms." So we got to see Seth. He's like, "Wait, what is happening in here?" It was so nice. He came in and it was just lovely to see him. So he was like, "Yeah, let me know when you're doing more." So it would be really fun to have him. He's such a sweetheart. Truly one of the funniest humans I've ever met. So nice.
There is also the possibility of a major cameo, but we can't talk about it. Not somebody from the show. So if we go forward into a second season, we'll come back later, and if it happens, we'll tell you all about it.
I was about to say, this has to be like our teased thing of this episode.
Every time I'm on, we
begin with colonoscopy and we start to
for that good.
Well, all I will say is this would blow your mind.
That good.
This one would blow your minds, but we'll see.
Oh my gosh, that's great. So yeah, we'll see you in 27 months, to talk about it.
I also think if we do a second season, I'm going to write myself a part.
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah, you have.
We never got you in doing another voice. I mean, we got Casey in there. Casey, our co-producer director. Casey is Mr. Pickles. Oh. So all of the chitter chatter, yeah, that's Casey. I was like, Casey.
He really disappointed.
Yeah. So ridiculous. What a weird
it was so funny because he was like, he was trying to find actual audio effects, and he said, "Well, I'm just going to do it like just to sort of lay it down so it's there. It's like a placeholder." And he started doing it, and we were like, "No, that's not a placeholder. You're keeping that. That's ridiculous." And it was so funny because I tend to be serious about it. And then certain things happen that are absurd. Like as soon as Emma started doing the dog, my initial response was, no, that's too absurd. We can't do that. And then I paused and I was like, no, we have to do that. It's so absurd. It was lovely.
Okay. Before you had mentioned you would like to have, if possible, David Boreanaz on the show. So kind of this.
I feel like you're blushing even asking this question.
You have to fan Natalie off.
Yeah.
Buffy?
James Marsters wasn't enough for you?
First of all, he's just so great.
So good.
I mean, we didn't talk about how wonderful James is. And James was sick.
Wow.
He was sick and he still showed up. We put him in a little glass room right off the main room so he could see everybody. but he was kind of removed because he was sick. And he just like, he was like, even if I have to come back and record some stuff because it's, I'm sick, whatever. We ended up recording like 2 things, like very, very minimal. He was such a trooper, but when he
wanted to give everybody the performance so they could play off of it. And the performance was amazing. You're just sitting there and this incredibly sexy voice is coming over the.
No, it was really funny. Our Lydia and Meg from Audible UK were there for the record. And when he started recording the like opening voiceover stuff, his film noir voice came out and it was like, oh, everyone's getting very red-faced in the studio listening to this.
Yeah, in the booth. Lydia and Meg turned into 13-year-old girls at that point. Anyway, sorry, back to David. We could go on about James forever. James is like it's literally like if you're going to have, I hate to use the word weapons in a case like this, but if you're going to have an arsenal like that, it's like James is the Swiss Army knife. Like he can do anything.
Yeah.
And that's what is amazing. Like what he can modulate to accomplish whatever you need. He's so friggin' talented. Anyway.
And he and Juliet together, holy.
Oh yeah. And that's
talk about turning the heat up. Woo!
Yeah. All you need is them saying each other's character names, and that's it.
Okay, we're gonna all leave now.
Buffy or Spike, or Buffy and Angel?
Oh, Chris is gonna get in trouble.
I'm not gonna get in trouble because listen, I can give you the simple answer and I give you the complicated answer. You go first, Amber.
I don't know. I just hung out with Mark Lucas in Paris at a convention, which is why I have a cold from being on the plane. But he's so lovely. I was like, I'm rethinking the Riley thing. What a lovely human. Such a nice dude. He and his family, they're so kind and so sweet. So,
I mean, I guess for Buffy the Hallmark Christmas movie would be great. No offense to Mark Lucas, he's a great actor and he was perfect for that role, but the part was, the future boyfriend in the Hallmark Christmas movie. Look, here's what I would say. I would say that I'm going to piss off everybody right now. From the perspective of romance, clearly Angel. However, when he meets her, she's 16 years old and he's 200 and something. So let's just say right off the bat, that's a problem. And then we're talking about Spike. I would say that Spike, post getting his soul, thumbs up. Prior to getting his soul, he's a sociopathic rapist. So let's just go with that. So I would say, much like, look, Amber and I are both friends with Charlene Harris, who wrote the amazing Sookie Stackhouse books. There are 13 of them. And at the end of the series, spoilers, all of her fans, there were like 3 or 4 different guys in that series that the fans were arguing over who Sookie should end up with. And at the end of the series, Sookie's like, you know what? Screw all you guys. You're all selfish and none of you are really right for me. I choose myself. I'm going to go on and have my own life and have my own happiness and find somebody who will come to my happiness instead of having me have to change myself to be with them. And I think that should have been Buffy's ending as well.
Thank you. That is what I always say. Everybody always gets mad at me when I'm just like, honestly, neither of them. Like they both have a role, and like she was always, not what the, when she wasn't pining after somebody, or there wasn't like that complication. She was always finding her strength, and that's not to say that she can't find her strength with a partner in the future. Yeah. But I always got really frustrated because, I'm not anti-romance. I am a 10% in all of my media, but with certain characters, sometimes romance doesn't necessarily play to their strengths. And, I think maybe it was because she started as a 16-year-old with a 200-year-old vampire, the vampire part being the less creepy part of those two things.
Listen, I just feel like you're there is nothing wrong with saying Angel was the right guy at the right time. But that doesn't mean you need to end up with that guy. You know?
The real answer is Buffy and 15 years of therapy. Is
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I love that. I love that. That's great.
Buffy and her therapist, yeah.
Not, but you know, in like a therapist, like
In a professional capacity. Yes.
Oh my gosh. I love it.
I used to always say Buffy and Faith, but the problem with Buffy and Faith is she's just as much of a psycho as the rest of them. So
yeah, she was a really good character, though. I will say,
great character.
Great.
Yeah.
And Tara was a great character too. Justice for Tara.
Thank you.
Justice.
Fight forever.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Aw.
Thanks,
Guys.
I couldn't eat that night after that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very upset.
Yeah.
Yes. This was
Yeah.
awesome.
Thank you so much for this.
Yes,
Really great.
This is amazing.
Our pleasure.
I got Audible just to listen to this.
Yes. Yeah. So
Thank you.
They love that.
yeah.
Hear that, Audible? More seasons.
Yes. Yes.
Yay.
Yay. Yeah, so check out Slayers, a Buffyverse story, an Audible original. Librarian who may or may not be a watcher, and if you we have lots of Buffy related media and books, including what was Big Bad was one that we really liked. That was fun.
Yeah.
Like anything Buffy is always great. And thank you so much. And Christopher, you and Amber, you both have your own books. Come into your library, talk to your watchers about your other projects, and this was great. So this was Jessica with Syosset Libraries Turn the Page. My gosh, this is Jessica with Syosset Libraries Turn the Page podcast. My co-hosts today were
Jen. Goodbye.
And Natalie, thank you.
And we are going to close this chapter.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.